So Lehan, I know today we're speaking again about the very relevant topic of cybersecurity and AI, looking a bit deeper, particularly for the enterprise. So perhaps to start
Yes.
with, how do the cybersecurity concerns of enterprises differ from those encountered by SMEs? And then how can AI infused solutions address them?
Yeah, it's a very good starting point. So if you look at enterprises versus SMEs or lower SMB, they have a lot more structured approach. They usually have a level of management that goes into then the C levels, where the CISOs and the CIOs get around a boardroom and they need to apply proper compliance and so on and so forth. So it's definitely a lot more formalized. They need to fight a lot more for technologies and things like that. They need to go through very, very rigorous and proper testing and case studies and proof of concepts of everything that they need to procure. They need to speak to the risk teams. They need to speak to the governance teams. They need to make sure that the business is completely aligned with what the security guys are saying. And they also most often need to be very, very good at providing evidence of why the selected solutions are of necessity. Because it also gets more expensive the larger the organization gets, and cybersecurity solutions get expensive the larger type of technologies you get. So when it comes to AI and machine learning capable solutions, it's again about one of the CIO's biggest things is to stay up with innovation and to stick and stay on trend, basically. So if the attackers out there are going to be able to make use of these technologies, machine learning and the likes, to infuse and augment their own tools, so should you have at least the same kind of capabilities within your tools. Otherwise, you'll struggle to obviously defend against such type of attacks. So as we move forward, obviously machine learning gives us the ability to allow the machines to do the work of the human at a much faster, more accurate rate. And it just makes for a much more robust, accurate security system.
Fantastic. So what are some of the top concerns that CISOs are facing with regards to the whole work from home environment that we're now in and having a dispersed workforce?
Yeah, there's quite a few actually. I think, well, the first concern I think most CISOs faced was secure communications for all. Most of the big enterprises would have had something in place, but usually for the road warriors, the guys that are working off-site, maybe the salespeople, the executives and so on. Now suddenly they had to literally go and procure very, very high bandwidth capable VPN solutions for secure communications. But I think that was last year and this is now. So I think a lot of them have overcome such situations by now. I think the next thing that they needed to immediately address was the situation around awareness. If the CISOs found themselves without having done some awareness leading up to this sudden mobilization of workforce at such a scale, you are sitting with very, very weak links now all around the country, wherever they are connecting into your organization. So the whole idea that the CISOs would have deployed at that point is to start looking at enabling the users and getting them aware. So there's obviously a lot of different tools out there, and we, for example, have an awareness, online awareness type of campaign that we do as well, that gets the users to that level where you can trust them, and they actually become your first line of defense instead of your weakest link, which is kind of the idea. You need to really be cognizant of the fact that these guys used to be inside the organization where they don't need to think about the security. It's not a worry for them. There's a team that handles it. Now they very much take that whole little office and puts it at home. So it's almost like bring your own office. It's not just bring your own device anymore. So absolutely, that was a nightmare for the CISOs. And then it comes down to the endpoint, let's call it endpoint management of those endpoints that are connecting in from remotely. Those are the three biggest things. Is the endpoint. You need to make sure that that endpoint, no matter where it is now, still communicates properly, still has its patches going, regular updates of the antivirus databases, making sure that stuff like account management and password management and those things are still heavily enforced and audited and checked regularly, just to make sure that the connections that are now suddenly flocking into your business are the legitimate users, and that there's nothing maybe of a fraudulent nature or hacker attempts or something coming through those connections.
It's a great point. Thank you. So then I take it cybersecurity has become more of a priority for CIOs, in light of the whole remote working trend. And, we heard last year that more than likely we can anticipate a hybrid sort of approach to working from home moving forward. How well are CIOs rising to the challenge of this priority?
Yeah, that's also a very good question. So I think it's hit and miss at the moment. From the discussions I've had, it's been a very, very difficult year of a lot of barriers that had to be overcome, a lot of training on the day that needed to be performed. It's strange, the technologies for remote working has always existed, but it's for some reason when you start scaling it to the level that it's scaled now, it presents a whole new can of worms or something, that gets opened up. So the CISOs are definitely communicating to one another. They stick to one another, they get help from one another. And they are slowly but surely winning the fight, but I don't think they've won the war yet. And I think for the larger enterprises, the ones that have decent budget and finances, it's really easy to cut a check to make the whole problem go away. But for the CISOs, they still need to convince the board. They still need to do the due diligence. They need to get risk down. They've got all these various factors that they themselves have to balance in order to make it all work. Just seemingly looking at a guy working from home that's successfully working from home does not necessarily constitute a safe work from home scenario. There could be many things going on in the background that's not necessarily visible. So the CISOs have 100% had to rise to the occasion. They didn't really have a choice. It's not like you could choose whether to opt or not opt into the situation. They had to rise to the occasion, and it's going to be an ongoing battle. And as time goes on, you're going to start seeing more and more exploitation of this from the attacker side as well. Because for them right now, it's never been easier to get to a business or its people than it is right now.
Oh, that's a great point. Are there particular malware or advanced persistent threats, or APTs, that enterprises need to be alert to, beyond those already discussed in the wake of COVID-19 and remote working?
Yeah, there's always going to be, every single world, let's call it world event that happens. So whether it's the Olympics or soccer World Cups or whatever it is, it's always going to be exploited by the attackers in some way, shape or form. This has just never been seen before, where it's an entire global lockdown of countries and people and mobilization of workforce at such a scale. And no one could have ever predicted it, not even the attackers, luckily. Would have been able to predict it. But we're starting to see the attackers very much using this scenario or this platform and this availability of devices as a means to an end to further their advancement of mostly financial cybercrime that we're seeing at the moment. So phishing campaigns, for example, especially in even our region, I've noticed a huge uptick in the amount of phishing campaigns that I've witnessed even for myself. And we mentioned about machine learning earlier on. The phishing campaigns are becoming of such a nature that you can't tell the one from the other. It's really, really well crafted because the availability of data to get scraped with various tools of the internet to impersonate a friend or a colleague or a manager through an email is becoming very, very easy for the attacker to do at quite a rapid rate, and also to do it at scale. And we're starting to see that absolutely through this period of time that's been, it's been quite heavy on the increase. We've also noticed a huge rise in the amount of APT software, because it's not almost not malware anymore, it's proper software. The way that it works, the way that it's developed, it's really, really well done, actually. We're starting to see that going more mainstream now, where you used to only hear from APTs now and again, with big sensitive targets and so on. The thing is that those APTs, once they get discovered by us and other vendors, they no longer, they lose their wow factor, their like APT power, and they then become mainstream because those tools then get sold off in the dark web to other hackers for hire or for other malware writers. So we're starting to see the normal malware that used to be detectable by your normal regular anti-malware solutions with 95% efficiency. We're starting to see that drop drastically, and we're starting to see APTs creeping into that level of, we're now seeing between 10 and 20% of malware daily is APT type attacks, even though it's not targeted attacks at that point in time. It's very much APT software that's being used for regular type of attacks and campaigns as well.
Wow. You mentioned a bit earlier about moving to the edge. So can you elaborate a little bit on, the prediction, of course, is that 5G will enable that movement to the edge even more as we move into the next few years, as well as the fact that, what happened last year accelerated digitalization for many companies. So what impact do you think both of those trends will have on cybersecurity capabilities and the need for AI and machine learning?
Yes, that's very important. So we're standing at the edge of a brand new evolution in connectivity, 5G and edge technologies and so on. And again, it's an enabler for the attackers, unfortunately, as well. As much as it's going to improve everything we know about the internet, it's always going to also serve the bad as well, unfortunately. There's no getting away from that. I mean, we saw it in our region in Africa. The moment that the continent became better connected and we started seeing fast fiber to home connections and so on, there's just been a massive rise in attack campaigns throughout the continent, not just Southern Africa, but throughout the whole continent. We started seeing bespoke APT targeted attack campaigns in Eastern Africa that we've never ever seen before. And that's because of technology advancement. It's because of forward movement. It's because of more connectivity. And 5G is just going to bring it even more closer to everyone. And IoT is going to become a massive player where now everything can be connected because of the bandwidth that exists. And it also means that the rise to AI is going to be unprecedentedly fast now. We're seeing AI used by bespoke companies such as ourselves and maybe autonomous driving companies and so on. But we're now going to start seeing AI as a regular thing within your television, for example. Understanding what times of day it needs to switch itself on, for example, and things like that. So AI is really going to find its way again very close to home, very close to yourself. I mean, the mobile phones we carry, some of the apps in there already use artificial intelligence. So again, it's going to make life better. I don't want to scare people by saying AI is going to enable the attacker. It's going to enable us as well to prevent those attacks. As we just need to always make sure that whatever the attacker can use, we meet them at that challenge and not get left behind, which is not, it won't happen. At least that fight has been there for a long time. We've seen the evolution of threat over the last decade and a half, and we've been able to go toe to toe with the attackers. It's going to be interesting when AI becomes proper AI, let's call it, from the machine learning methodologies and disciplines, where it becomes real AI, where it's able to make its own decisions and become slightly self-aware, for the lack of a better word, because obviously I don't mean conscious, but mostly being able to make decisions on its own just because of very, very well-written algorithm. The guys that are going to, get access to those technologies, that might bring a new frontier that we haven't seen before, something very unprecedented, both from a protection and an attacker point of view. where you might see around the curb, maybe 2 years from now, you might see an entire AI bot on your network impersonating an employee. It's got works in marketing. It sends emails every day based on other emails that it sees. It works in the business. You don't know where this user is. It's a real user. It performs like a user. It reacts like a user. It logs off and logs on at certain times. But meantime, it's an AI bot sitting on your network, spoofing the environment, learning things about the environment for whatever other cause. And those things are already kind of there, but it's going to become insanely tangible, almost like you won't be able to tell that this person is not a bot. Or this bot is a bot. So those kind of things are going to start turning up frequently and fast. And again, AI, as soon as it starts becoming that level of aware, AI can also train itself, which means it can exponentially become smarter. But that's a topic for another day. So that's where it gets strange.
Wow. You can't put the genie back in the bottle, right?
Yeah. Once you've unlocked it, it can get scary, I think.
Sure. Okay, so then, bearing that in mind, can you speak to the role that threat intelligence, with multi-layered endpoint protection, etc., more advanced levels of cybersecurity will play in countering these next generation of APTs and bots and the like?
Yes, 100%. So threat intelligence is very much, at least for us at Kaspersky, the most important thing within our software at the moment. And it's because, most of the anti-malware solutions have gotten used and have the algorithms in order to detect and match hashes with values and stuff like that. But threat intelligence is what gives us that real cutting edge, like news almost for us, about what is happening right now anywhere in the world. We've got over 400 million users worldwide with 250,000 companies that we protect. So the amount of intelligence that we receive on a daily basis makes us just so capable to react to change anywhere in the world straight away. And threat intelligence needs to be content rich as well. So it's not just to say that, yes, we found this new sample in Saudi Arabia and spread it to everyone so that they can get their defenses up. It's about knowing that it's in Saudi Arabia and that it happened during a specific time of day, for example, so that you know when the gap of entry was. All that kind of data makes the solution more advanced, because remember, every single data point in that threat intelligence gets fed into our machine learning as well for deep learning on the data. So it means that the solution becomes very, very good at detecting any malware without having ever seen it before, based on the large set of data and specific priorities, properties and telemetry and metadata that we've seen from other malware. So by just the virtue of the amount of data that we get, we are able to consistently train and enhance our defenses, and again, make it so that it's extremely rapidly capable. At the end of the day, we are trying to prevent even patient zero from an attack. Back in the days, antivirus has always been reactive. There needs to be a couple of people that needs to get infected before anyone can do anything about it. We're at that level now where we want the solution very much to be able to detect 0 day, 100% without fault and with no false positives. And the only way to do that is with machine learning and a huge database of threat intelligence.
Fantastic. That's very heartening to hear. I think perhaps finally, what, particularly as organizations move into this new year and try to get on the right footing with that, what should a user or organization do when they suspect, or if they suspect, that they have been breached or infected?
Yes, so that's a very difficult scenario for most of the businesses to comprehend and react to. So if you suspect you've been breached, let's start at the user level. If you as a user suspect that there's been a breach, the first thing you do is just shut everything down, pull all the cables out, and you phone the security team. And so often we are in a position, and this is why I love to encourage companies to become more make the security campaign or the security culture in the office something where you almost get rewarded for letting the security teams know of these things. So many times, and I find this with almost any business without fault, if you think you've been attacked, you don't want to say anything because, wow, now they look at my history or they do this or they think that I did something wrong. So you need to start with encouraging people to do the right thing and let the security officers know to come and have a look at your machine, investigate the machine, do the necessary forensics, and so on and so forth. And this again can be achieved through an awareness campaign where you treat people as if they were not doing something wrong, as if it happens. Sometimes it just happens. You clicked on a link in a phishing email that you just couldn't identify as phishing, as an example. So let the people know that's going to be able to fix the situation. That's if it happens to the user. If the business then starts looking into it and they see, wow, this is some sophisticated malware here, the best thing they need to do is, if they do not have their own incident response teams in place, or maybe they do, but they are stuck, is to get in touch with a vendor or some incident response, digital forensics, or malware analytics company that can assist you with your investigation. It's not worth sitting there, and again, malware works quickly. So the more time you waste, the harder it becomes to really eradicate it, and to also do post-mortem analysis to figure out exactly what they came for. Most of the APT campaigns and targeted attack campaigns works in a specific sequence. It will start with attacking an end user. Usually 90% of the time it will be through email. That's why email security is so important, and awareness for email is so important. Then it starts by implanting a small persistence on that machine. That is so the attacker knows, okay, we were able to penetrate a machine, we were able to evade the defenses and get onto a machine. Then they start spreading and they do the exploitation, and they might download other tools at that time, and they start hunting the network for the resources that they are actually after. Maybe it's your databases, maybe it's your intellectual property, maybe it's the development team's code. It depends per case. And then afterwards, they clear their tracks. That's 90% of the time, the malware will clear their tracks. They don't want you to know that they came in and stole your stuff, because that in itself is not going to serve the attacker. They want to have that attack happen usually without detection. And unfortunately, we've noticed that these type of attacks exist in an environment for 214 days on average undetected. As soon as that attack occurs in your environment and your security team has had a look at it, and they themselves are not capable to properly investigate it, that's when you should contact the likes of a anti-malware company, or someone that specializes in digital forensics, malware analysis, reverse engineering, those kind of things. Because more often than not, you'll be capable to understand exactly what happened and what they were after, which are the two biggest things you want to have, get, and also what did they extract? Did they get something out of the business already? That's probably the best advice I can give is, and again, make sure that you kind of have a retainer for that incident response. Don't phone an incident response business and tell them I need your assistance right now. More than likely, they've got projects ongoing. So make sure that you've got a retainer with 24/7 emergency response, so that if something like that happens, you can immediately action your incident response and get them to start with investigation straight away.
Fantastic. Thank you. Really solid insight, and we really appreciate that.
Pleasure.